Ready when you are. So.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Hope you're all doing well. Today, we're going to be watching, oh my God, Anna Kasparian leaves the left and goes full Dave Rubin, or at least that's what, at
What?
least that's what Hutch, Pisco, Josiah, and Econo Boy say.
Dave Rubin. I mean,
Yeah.
Anna has not had good things to say about Dave Rubin over the years. Right?
No.
I mean, Dave Rubin left TYT, and I believe both Anna and Jank accused him of being in it just for the money. Like, I think he asked for $1 million or some exorbitant amount of money, and Jank was like, I'm not making $1 million. Why the fuck am I going to pay you $1 million?
Go ask the Russians. Oh, wait. Haha.
Was he involved in? Oh, he was, wasn't he?
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
word, my word! I guess he finally got his $1 million paycheck.
He got his $1 million paycheck, yeah.
And all for like 50 views. What's that all about? No, he
That's gonna
might
be
have.
weird. That's gonna be so bad and weird.
He might have gotten 50,000 views, but still,
I don't even think it got that. Yeah.
in the greater scheme of things, that's not a lot of influence. But
No.
yeah.
So Anna came out, I believe it was last week, with a substack
Yes.
about, and they're gonna read it. So I'm not gonna read it because they'll go through it on the stream. Talking about wanting to have conversations with people and look at things from a non-tribal perspective. All like very typical, based enlightened centrism, based independent thinking sort of mindset. Not even, and it's so funny, like nothing that Anna has said or done for the last few years would lead a rational, sane person to think that she's going to go in the Dave Rubin route. Now, the Dave Rubin route, even if we're going to be as charitable as possible to Dave Rubin, which is fine, is like when someone is on like very clearly on one side, the left or the right, and then they do like a complete 180 in the other direction. So Dave Rubin fully on the left, all of a sudden there's a complete 180, super like everything on the right. And then you have like Candace Owens, same thing. You have what was the guy? I'm trying to remember his name. The guy who went from the right to the left, the YouTuber.
I mean, look, to be fair to Dave Rubin, I do think the transition happened over maybe a year because he did go the classical liberal route. He famously, his first show was with Sam Harris, who was an avowed liberal with TDS. So I think he kind of gingerly moved over in that direction. I don't remember it being like a instant switch.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's fair. It took like a year, but it's still pretty unusual, in my opinion. It's pretty unusual for someone to just completely do like a 180 in their politics. That's like a strange thing that occurs.
I completely agree. And I think like you and I both have very strong moral intuitions about politics. My theory on Dave Rubin, and look, I've never talked to Dave Rubin, but is that he is kind of one of those people that just views it as a job. Like he doesn't really have very strong intuitions about politics. So if you're in that kind of position, you're going to be more swayed by what other people are telling you. And obviously, if Dave Rubin is thrown out of the left and basically excommunicated, he only is able to deal with conservatives. And obviously, he's going to kind of adapt that kind of perspective pretty easily.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chad. Hunter Avalon. That's what I was thinking of. Yes. So anyway,
look, I think the same thing of Hunter Avalon, to be honest with you. I think Hunter Avalon was just like a kid thinking, oh, I can do Ben Shapiro impersonations on the internet and get some clicks.
I mean, he made a lot of videos that were very, promoting a lot of philosophy and ideology that was aligned with like a pretty, like very, very strongly right-wing oriented with no sort of moderation whatsoever. And then it's interesting to just do a complete 180 in the other direction. Yeah. And that one happened very quickly.
Yeah, that was overnight. That was like he had a conversation with Vosh, and all of a sudden he was like, oh, Vosh is really popular, and I'm not very popular anymore. Maybe
I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if I think that was going on. Because like he never really did well after the switch, to my understanding.
No.
But anyway, my only point in bringing all this stuff up is that like Anna hasn't done anything to really signal or show that she's going to do one of these like dramatic team switches go from left to right over the course of a year or anything like that. All that she's done is said, like, listen, there's, bad actors on the left that I think should be called out. And I don't like that my team, or what was my former team, the left, would just sort of ignore them for the sake of tribal politics. I want to just have my view on things and be able to call out the bad actors where I see them. That's all she said, right? And yet it's so funny because you have the people who are so, their brain is so controlled by the NPC tribalism, especially as we are so close to the election, that they cannot, they're just so enraged. They're so triggered. They're so emotional about this that they can't actually like look at anything that she says or does in any sort of objective way whatsoever. And they get so mad and so butthurt just because someone says, I don't want to wear your team colors anymore. I don't want to wear your jersey, even if I'll still vote for the candidate that you're also voting for.
Yeah, I think I relate to this perspective quite a bit. And
Yes.
obviously because it's a perspective I share. Like I want to be able to look at both parties objectively and kind of suss out what the actual truth is. And what gets to me, and I think Anna kind of feels the same way, is just the level of dishonesty is, I mean, it's getting pretty out of control here. So
Right.
I think that's what's bothersome. And we'll probably see a lot of dishonesty in this video that we're going to watch, right?
Right.
A lot of straw manning, a lot of just making things up about people's positions. So
well, let's jump into it.
Okay.
We're about to lose another one to the Why I Left the Left. Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks is just released a substack called Unaligned. Independent and unaligned. You're right.
Joining the Kingmakers. Welcome,
There
Anna.
you go.
Welcome. Yeah. If you're not willing to cross the aisle and vote for the other party, then why does your vote even matter?
You're just a sucker.
Who's going to cater to you, right?
Yeah.
Got to at least consider the other party. Jeez.
Listen, black men were like not supporting Kamala enough, and she comes out the next day like, listen, I'm going to bribe you. Here's a bunch of money.
Look, that is how politics works. The problem is, I think if Kamala Harris loses maybe 0.5% of the white working class, she's screwed.
Yeah.
And she's already way down because Biden was doing quite well with, Scranton Joe, right? People have been voting for him forever.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, oh, yeah, the white old timer. Now, like, what is this?
I've changed. It's a very short read, but we got to look at it. After Trump came onto the political scene, and especially after he was elected in 2016, the us versus them mentality immediately took shape. Anyone who refused to, quote, resist Trump was seen as a threat to the country, and I was fully on board with that mindset. It all felt righteous at first, but eventually the tactics deployed to fight Trump became repetitive, boring, and ultimately fruitless.
God, I love it. I love her tactical use of the word righteous. Don't you? Don't you?
I do.
Anna read Righteous Mind around the time when she came on our show, which was kind of cool. And she did the Moral Foundations questionnaire and all that stuff. So yeah, she definitely took to the idea, the Moral Foundations theory, and the idea that we basically get moral intuitions about different things, and it leans us in a certain direction or another direction. And look, if you want to be a journalist, you got to fight against that, right? Those are your biases.
Polling shows that he has increased his support among Black and Latino voters despite wall-to-wall coverage on his unsavory, racist, or bigoted remarks. Several years of media raising alarm over Trump's threat to democracy has only...
Now, is someone who wants to do this sort of like pivot to the right that they want to lie and pretend Anna's doing, are they going to come out and say that Donald Trump has made unsavory or bigoted remarks?
Hell no. Why would they say that? Yeah.
I know. This is why it's so frustrating to deal with these people who are so... I don't even know. I honestly don't know if they know that they're being dishonest. I don't know if they know they're lying. They're so NPC brained that it's like you can say, 10 things that they agree with, and then you say that a 1/11th thing, and they just start shitting themselves and vomiting and frustration and anger. And it's like, okay, obviously if you're trying to do the quote Dave Rubin pivot to the right, if you just want to be the right wing grifter, why would you come out and say that you think Trump has said racist or bigoted things? Wouldn't you just be like, I'm putting on the MAGA hat, go Trump, Trump's the best, right? Like none of these like weird pivots to the middle that they think that all the grifters do, none of it makes any sense. It's not really like the big money isn't in that position anyway.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of things that Trump has done that have been interpreted as bigoted and racist remarks. So, I mean, I even probably disagree a bit with Anna on this perspective, but so yeah, look, obviously you would just go full MAGA if you were going right wing, but
right for the grift.
Yeah.
The quote grift.
Only resulted in a tight presidential race between himself and Kamala Harris. Oh, discover more? No, thank you. I can't help but acknowledge that the only thing this accomplished by resisting Trump was less understanding and more division among Americans.
Also beating Trump.
Right. Well, yeah, sure. You're right. In multiple elections, I mean, him in 2020, but his Republican Party in virtually every election cycle.
But like, can you just pause right there? Like,
Yeah.
All she's describing right now is that the tactics, like, were in her mind ineffective in terms of stopping him. She's not denying the truth or falsity of the claims about Trump. She's saying it's boring, it's repetitive, it doesn't work to do X. So far, snoozer.
Right. I can't help but acknowledge
this. I mean, this basically. Well, this makes the argument that she's not really going left; that she's just disagreeing on tactics.
Right. Well, she's saying two things. Number one, she's saying that the tactics don't work, but also that this sort of, these way of looking at the world is not breeding any sort of understanding between the two factions that make up American politics.
Right.
She was not able to understand, and her team at the time, the left, is just completely not able to understand why people support Trump. And if you just it can't just be like, oh, racist, racist, racist. If you have more and more people that are not white, who are supposedly the ones being racist against, seem to be supporting Trump in higher numbers. Like there's got to be something more there to understand. And if you actually want to understand what's going on in the world and understand people's, view of things, like to me, that's a laudable goal.
Yeah, this is what started my sort of political awakening journey. Was I just did not understand conservatives at all. They would say things that I just would break my brain. I'd be like, how could you think that? Like, what is going on in there?
Right.
So I started reading tons of books on this stuff, and that's.
But no, that's a snooze fest, Adam. Okay, trying to understand the world or people or politics, that's all just a snooze fest.
Well, if you're in a fucking cult, yes, that is a snooze fest, right? Obviously, you already have all the answers, right?
Yes.
This is just people outside trying to deceive you, trying to trick you into leaving the cult.
Right.
Right? Becoming unaligned.
Framing as a cult is exactly perfect and correct. And that is why I think they're reacting the emotionally weird way that they're reacting to this post.
Yeah, you don't want to. Somebody who actually leaves a tribe, goes on a journey that becomes interesting and fruitful. Oh my God, that's dangerous. Other people might do that. You're showing them the way. Why are you doing this?
The only thing that was accomplished by resisting Trump was less understanding and more division among Americans.
Jesus Christ.
I personally...
Look, Pisco's so pissed. He's like, I love that division. I live for that division.
Well, he sees the division as just completely one-sided. He sees it as like all the division is just coming from the right. The left is, I mean, this is what it seems like. Doing some mind reading here is that the left is just not really responsible for the division.
Yeah, because the right won't submit to their compliance tactics. Oh, imagine that. Somebody wants you to kneel by force and they don't want to do it. Like, of course, Pisco, that's how the world works. You don't want to do it either.
Became reluctant to challenge my side or engage with voters who disagreed with me. In turn, I became less knowledgeable about the people.
That's on you, Anna. That's on you.
That's a you
if
problem.
You have a problem connecting with the rest of the world. We criticize MAGA all the time. We engage with MAGA. We try to seek out MAGA
in the most bad faith possible way, Pisco. You do not understand them at all. You understand a straw man version of conservatives, and that helps you sleep very well at night.
That's what's funny about him, you know, yelling now. It's like, yeah, he doesn't really understand, you know, any of the people on the right that he debates. He only understands them as far as how do I like beat them in an argument. He's not really understanding like the moral foundations, the philosophy that they're coming from, other than sort
Yeah.
of, as you said, the bad faith way of like, well, they're racists, they're bigots, they're bad people, blah, blah, blah.
A helpful way to perceive of conservative and liberal is kind of offense and defense. The conservatives are kind of the defense of society, and the liberals are kind of the offense of society. And look, if you want a good team, you need a good offense and a good defense. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a healthy way to look at it. I don't think looking at it in this Manichaean way where the conservatives are going to die one day and the liberals are going to take over and everything is going to be utopia is helpful. It really isn't. There's a little bit of an age component to this thing too, where conservatives are wiser, they have more experience, you know, they've had some bravado about starting new projects that ended up to be catastrophic. So they're a little more apprehensive about change. So look, you got to understand people and use the good attributes that they bring to the political table. Pisco's not about that at all. Pisco just wants, he knows he's right. You know, he's a young attorney. He's been to law school. He's smart. He knows it all. And he just wants to school you on it, which is kind of dumb.
MAGA people, if you are finding trouble criticizing your own side, that's on you. Don't put that on us and say that everyone who's resisting Trump is a futile, because you certainly don't seem to have been in the trenches. You weren't on all the litigations that were fighting against Trump and having substantive results. For example, fighting his attempts to suspend a temporary protected status, fighting his attempts to put up the Muslim ban, all that stuff. That was Democrats. And the fact that you are not seeing the fruits of your bullshit doesn't mean that by and large the efforts to resist Trump have been ineffective. That's a bullshit statement.
My evolution.
He didn't even understand what she said. She didn't say that. She's just talking about in terms of like this lack of understanding where people are coming from. And then he rattles off a bunch of court cases.
Yeah, she's talking from a cultural perspective,
Right.
Pisco, not from a litigating on the Democrat side perspective. Obviously, she's not a litigator. She's a political commentator.
Right. And I mean, obviously, and to just kind of hand wave away, sort of like she hasn't been for many, many years on the Young Turks doing political advocacy for the left is ridiculous. Like he's just pretending like, oh, she didn't do anything. She wasn't there in the trenches.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Revolution started in 2022 when I was sexually assaulted by a homeless man in my neighborhood as I was walking my dog. That horrible experience alone didn't change me politically, but the treatment I received from the far left and some progressives after sharing the story did. Now, I'm not familiar with this, so somebody more like familiar with the TYT lore can interrupt at any time. I was told that by publicly sharing...
None of them know. They're all just totally silent. That's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they're smart enough not to say anything, you know.
They're like, okay.
Yeah.
What had happened to me, I was stigmatizing my, quote, unhoused neighbors, end quote. Others accused me of feeding into racist tropes because they assumed my attacker was black, but I'd never disclosed the man's race. He was white.
Who the cares? Can I just say, yeah, there are idiots on the left who will say like that. Ignore them. That should not be a source for your political reawakening. Some off.
Pisco here advocating for my block of him, which is perfect. I love it. Yeah, exactly right, Pisco. There are idiots on the left that you should ignore. Thank you for validating that.
That happened to you, and some idiots, because guess what? You surround yourself with leftist idiots who will say stupid identity politics like that. No, there's going to be.
So it's just funny. Like he's going to go on this like very like long, angry rant or hinge rant. And then like the next sentence from the Anna thing, you can even see on the screen. It's like, that doesn't mean everyone on the left thinks or believes or behaves in the way the small group of lunatics do. Far from it, but it does mean that there are factions and flaws on both sides of the aisle, known as a monopoly in truth. Okay, so if Pisco could just control remember when I said that Pisco like has no emotional control over himself?
You
whatsoever?
did, yeah.
Right.
He seems super bitter about that.
No, yeah, because it's true. Because I fucking got his number. I nailed him on that one. He doesn't. He's always like a cobra. He's just kind of like always like
coiled, ready
coiling
to
himself
strike.
tighter and tighter and tighter, ready to strike, but he's never like in a state of relaxation. So, but because in this next paragraph here, the whole point that Anna's talking about, the point that, you know, people that have sort of broken free of the matrix understand is that if you once you put on that team journey, the team jersey, and you just choose your team, it's just so easy. And this is just like the natural human process for you to be blinded by the things that your side is doing that are wrong, and to just see all the bad things that the other side is doing, and to become this like biased mouthpiece. And the only way to really see, okay, well, both sides are doing things that are shitty or wrong, is to pull off the jersey and try to look at everything objectively. Now, you can still say, listen, even if I pull off the jersey, I'm still going to vote more on the left, or I'm still going to vote more on the right because my natural moral intuitions tend to go in one direction or the other, or I logically start to side with one direction or the other. That's fine. No one said anything about that. Anna's not said anything about that. She's just saying, I want to be able to criticize bad actors on, quote, the left or my side without having all these people that I thought were my friends jump down my throat and attack me viciously. And for these guys, that's too much.
Of course. Yeah. Look, they're joining in the dog pile here.
Yeah. Well, and it's also annoying too, because like, so I don't believe any of these four guys. I don't believe they're like woke in terms of, I mean, they're probably a little woke in terms of, I know like when we're talking to Hutch about like some of the trans stuff, but he doesn't really have like a good knowledge set about any of this stuff. Like, I don't think any of these guys are into critical theory or socialists or anything of that nature that I'm aware of, but they're just sort of like mainstream lefties who, because of the election and because of Trump and because they view Trump as such an existential threat, it's like anytime you say, okay, well, here's something the left is doing wrong, they freak out emotionally and mentally, because it's like, oh, anytime you're criticizing the left, there's the fear that that's going to make someone vote for Donald Trump down the road. And that's what happens in all these situations. Same thing with people on the right. It's like, okay, you can't criticize Donald Trump because if you do that, I'm afraid that you're going to vote for Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or whomever. And that's why this tribal thinking is so toxic. You literally can't criticize your team because you're too afraid of giving the other team ammunition.
Yep, that's
Unless
exactly right.
You're criticizing them from a perspective of, well, they're not left-wing enough, they're not right-wing enough, because then you're not really trying to get them, the person to vote for the other side. You're trying to pull them towards your direction. So that's the only sort of like allowed critique.
Yeah, truth gets tossed in the wastebasket in favor of trying to gaslight people into voting for your side.
Right.
Which is what I hate most of all about all this stuff.
Be some asshole who's going to say something like that. It should not be a source of political reawakening if you have any intellectual bona fides or morals or like a structure.
Look at this. What a fucking piece of shit. What a fucking piece of shit. Pisco is a garbage human being, okay?
Mm-hmm.
To question someone's morality because they disagree with you. What a fucking garbage human being.
Well, and over this too, right? So it's like
oh,
a
I
minor
know.
dispute.
I know. This is what they constantly don't get about us or our audience. Like they think we're, spoon feeding conservatives. Our audience doesn't give a fuck who I vote for. Our audience digs the fact that I am not chastising them because of who they vote for. That's the thing that they don't get. And Pisco, look, he can't do that because the only reason he starts a YouTube channel, the only reason he goes on any of these shows is to convince you to vote for the candidate that appeals to his moral intuitions. Like, it's so disgusting to me. Like, I have a sense of humility in the world. Like, this election is a tough decision. I do not want to make this decision alone, okay? I would hate the idea of that, right? But Pisco would step right up and say, oh, of course I'll make the decision. Let me decide who's going to be the next president of the United States. That's the kind of hubris that just is shocking to me. It's fucking shocking. I actually believe in democracy, Sitch. I really do. Like, I don't know how this election is going to go, but I know there's a whole bunch of really smart people out there that are thinking this over, and whichever way we go, I think is going to be best for the country. I really do.
Structure of thought that supports what you say. That the fact that, like, I don't know, like, imagine that you had a very personal experience where something like a tragic happened to you, and all of a sudden it made you a Republican. Where can you, if all it takes to make you this kind of like pseudo right-wing person is a bad thing happen to you? I mean, how well thought out were your narratives in the first place?
Look, this is such fucking cult behavior. Like, this is such cult behavior. It's like our ideology has to stick so well that you could literally be fucking tortured and you would still cling to that ideology.
Right.
Look, the ideology is doing all the thinking for you, Pisco. Your brain is completely shut off.
Well, also, like, what even is he's like pseudo right wing? What is Anna's position that's pseudo right wing that he's even referring to?
Look, and I don't, what is so wrong about being right wing? I don't.
There isn't, but that's why this is why this whole conversation is so toxically disgusting. Because it's like you get in this thing where they're like, "Oh, you're right wing, you're evil," and you're like, "Okay, first of all, number one, you're right. There's nothing evil necessarily about being just right wing automatically. Number one, but then number two, you just deny because you're like, well, I don't even feel like I'm even on that. I don't even feel like I have that many moral intuitions. I think Anna's like, on the like the left is too soft on crime and some stuff, and like maybe like that's it."
How is that
And
right wing?
I know exactly. So it's like you get into this like insanely disgusting situation where you have to like get in these arguments with these people that's just completely unhinged, and it's all just
Yeah.
about you trying to define or describe yourself.
Yeah, it's weird. It's this weird form of identity politics. It totally is, where you're just gonna denigrate anyone who's right wing and idolize anyone who's progressive. Look,
Right.
I think you need both in society. You really do. It's like a collaboration of the two. But I just like a lot of this I think goes back, and this is why I always fight this stereotype that right wingers are greedy racists. Look, nobody wants like fuck greedy racists, okay? I don't like racists. I don't like fucking greedy people.
Mhm.
Well, unless they're selling cookies for an obnoxiously amount of money, right?
There you go. Then you're on board with it. Yeah.
Right. Maybe I'm a little soft on greedy people. Okay. I'll
Mhm.
give you that. But
Okay.
I don't like racists.
Right.
But this stereotype, they cannot see beyond that. They see right wing as racist. So if you see the world that way, if you don't think there are right wing people that are not racist, then you're going to fall into this trap every time. And I do think that is part of Anna's evolution, because I think Anna has kind of come to the conclusion that not every right winger is a racist.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, not only did I suddenly see the flawed thinking of some on the left, I also witnessed their cruelty and hypocrisy in real time. These terrible traits that I'd associated solely with my political opponents were obviously not exclusive to their tribe. I was stupid for ever thinking that was the case. And this is where who the ever said that the left is incapable of stupidity and cruelty? That's your
stupid assumption.
Right.
And liberals are stupid a lot of the time too. Everyone's stupid.
Right.
No, we're not. Whoever said that that like we're
not
immune
like
from problems? That's just the dumbest thing. Why did you assume that? I don't even believe that you assume that, because the entirety of your discourse, the entirety of the Young Turks has included criticizing the left wing, including especially Biden people. So this is such bullshit that you ever thought that people that supported the anti-Trump movement were free from all sin. That's just a lie.
So this is very interesting because number one, before when the Young Turks was criticizing Biden or people on the left, they're criticizing from the perspective that
he's going to lose.
Like, well, he's going to lose, or he's selling out to not be left. Like he's selling out to the big businesses or Israel or something like that. If they were adhering to true like left-wing principles, then they would be morally correct. And then there's this sort of realization of like, well, no, you can believe and follow all the quote left-wing principles you want and still be like a horrible piece of shit. That's number one. And number two, I don't believe Pisco actually believes what he's saying, because if he did, if he just believed like, yeah, there's lots of like really horrible people on the left, there's lots of hypocrisy and stupidity on the left. If he actually believed that, then why is he getting so upset about this? He'd just say, okay, well, Anna, she still doesn't support Donald Trump, but she doesn't want to necessarily put on the team jersey, on the left, and that's fine. Like if that was the case, if he actually believed that, why would he be so unhinged about all this?
Yeah, another point I object to is just framing her as a liar, a literal liar. He's saying now
Right.
that she's lying when, look, if he disagrees, he could frame it as she's mistaken, right? There's no reason to call her a fucking liar. Just no, there's like
Right.
no good faith in Pisco at
No,
all.
no.
The only time Pisco will give you good faith is when he's trying to manipulate you to like voting for his candidate. Then he'll give you, look, and I was guilty of this too, I think, where I would, when I was really on the left and I would talk to my parents about voting or anything like that. Obviously my parents were far more conservative than me, and I would think, oh, if I say the right thing, or if I word this the right way, I'll get them to agree with me. I'll change their mind. They're going to vote for the candidate I want them to vote for. And it's so silly, because thinking back, I really did think of myself as like morally superior, and I need to talk down to these people so that they can understand where I am coming from, the high and mighty, 20-year-old. It's like, it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. Like, the sooner you can come to some humility about your politics in your life, the better you will be, the better off you will be, the more understanding you will have of whoever your political opposition is, and you'll just sleep better at night. You'll feel safer. Yeah. You're not going to worry that the next election is going to be catastrophic. Where's that button? I'm looking for it.
The only thing you have to do in that spot is just go, all that crazy over there, I disavow. That's it.
Right.
That's it. You can maintain all of your like left-leaning sort of proclivities.
This is what's weird about this situation, because Hutch was on, and Hutch said he was, I think, 41. And I'm talking about this situation I had when I was like in my 20s. I'm like, Hutch, you need to catch up a little bit. I think Pisco's in his 20s, right?
I think
Pisco's
so.
like fresh out of law school. He's probably like 24. I mean, it makes sense on Pisco. It really does. In your 20s, most people in their 20s are kind of full of shit, right? I mean, that's normal. And I often feel bad going, well, I don't want to say it that way. Everyone
Going
always says that.
hard.
Yeah. What's a better way to say it than that?
Going roughshod.
Yeah.
Going hard when they bend over. Yeah.
Making fun of people in their 20s, because I think people in their 20s can make mistakes, especially in the political realm. So
of course.
I guess you gotta understand if they're actually doing tangible damage. Like, I think Vosh is 27 or something like that, and that guy is, doing those people that watch Vosh and listen to Vosh, they're all going to have heart attacks by the time they're 35. They're just like so crazed. Hopefully they're just watching him for entertainment value.
Or whatever.
That doesn't mean that everyone on the left thinks or behaves in the way they're again just acknowledging.
So it's a small group.
Yeah, the small group of lunatics do. Far from it, but it does mean that there are factions and flaws on both sides of the aisle, and no one has a monopoly on truth. Hang on, everyone, clap, goddammit!
Oh my God! How long did this take you to write, Anna? You must have really thought about it. No one has a monopoly on truth.
Well, because the two words "both sides" wouldn't justify a substack, so you gotta.
I just can't believe
that both sides triggers the fuck out of people. I always try to say all sides, because you're basically saying the same thing, but the both sides really, it's like the red cape with the bull. When you say both sides, they're like,
It
what?
is funny. It triggers the fuck out of people so hard.
It does, yeah.
That's like a good dipstick indicator of like how NPC brained, how tribal brained you are, is how much the both sides thing triggers you.
Yeah, exactly. She should have bolded it and now italicized it to really stick the knife in.
This
no
is so
self-awareness,
insane.
Anna?
Like, hold on. She's talking. Guys, I have been one of Anna's strongest defenders, TYT in general. Okay. Obviously, I hadn't read this until just now. We're reading it together for the first time.
Take it all back.
Insane. Basically, look, what she's saying, guys, what she's saying is, well, a small group of lunatic leftists criticized me for my story about getting sexually assaulted by this homeless person. And so now I'm equating a small group of leftists to like the whole Republican Party that seems to not believe
absolute
that climate
lunatics.
change is real, doesn't believe Trump lost the election, stole Supreme Court justices, led to permanent immunity for presidents. I mean, like, you know, argued in front of the Supreme Court that they concocted that, you know, the state legislature.
Okay, I don't know if I've seen any of Econo Boy's stuff, so I don't have like a mental map picture of where I think he's at.
He
But this
called
is-
you conservative. I know that.
That's pretty hilarious. But this is like, first of all, I mean, it's incredibly straw man, bad faith, because what Anna said was that experience wasn't what that experience isn't what like said, oh, I'm going to do this like thing where I'm going to suddenly become unaligned now, you know, where the people on the left attacked her for sharing this, you know, personal experience about being assaulted. But she was saying that was what kind of opened the door for her to start to see things differently for the first time. Okay,
Yes.
that's number one. So
Yes.
him saying like, oh, you're equating this one thing that happened to you with some like weirdos on Twitter to all these things, which by the way, all things I agree with, I think that are bad. Okay, number one. But number two, so that wasn't her point. But it's also just ridiculous to be like, okay, so we're going to ignore the fact that the faction that would jump down Anna's throat for sharing that assault experience, that faction has its hooks pretty deep in a lot of mainstream institutions and pretty deep in a lot of aspects of the Democratic Party. There's a reason that Kamala Harris raised her hand saying that she wanted to give, you know, in 2019, saying that she would give, you know, Medicaid to illegal immigrants, but now she won't ever say that, right? There's this massive pivot. There's a reason that we had the BLM riots where the literal entire country went batshit fucking crazy about a lie that was perpetuated by the left, that there was some massive number of white officers killing unarmed, innocent black men.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's just this whole, it's so frustrating and so disgusting to me on a moral level, where we all lived through those years. We all lived through this time period where the amount of the disgusting level of anti-white racism, the disgusting level of sexism against males, the disgusting level of hatred towards America, towards liberalism was just blasted every fucking day, and still is blasted pretty consistently. And we're all just supposed to sit on our hands and say, oh, well, you know, I guess we can't talk about it because Trump is bad, right? And that's the problem here. And that's why it's just disgusting when they just try to hand wave all that away. It's like, oh, it's just kids on college campuses, right? When it's just so, that's what they said in 2016. And so they let the fire grow, they let the virus spread, they let the wolf, you know, in the hen house, and it just grew more and more and more powerful.
Right. Yeah.
Remember, it's funny because I was watching Anna talk about, you know, her posts on a different podcast, and she brought up that thing. Remember, there's like the Uber DI situation where they were like, oh, you know, I don't like that at the company we're allowed, you know, we're calling people Karens left and right because that is pretty like racist and sexist against white women. And the head of the DI lady, who I think was like Asian too, she wasn't even like quote white. She was like, oh, okay, well, let's talk about not using like the word Karen. And just saying that made a bunch of people say that they felt uncomfortable being attacked, that they can't use a slur, bigoted slur, Karen, that the Uber lady, the DI, head of DI for Uber, was either fired or suspended for even suggesting this. It's so fucking disgusting to me that these people will just pretend like this shit isn't happening because they're so consumed with the fact that Donald Trump sucks. It's like, I get it. Donald Trump does suck. I don't like fucking Donald Trump too, but doesn't mean you get to close your eyes and bend over so that these fucking insane leftists can fuck you in the ass while you're so busy just looking in one direction, because that's all you care about. You're just so concerned about winning the election.
It's crazy. All the slurs go one way. It's exactly like it was back in the 1950s, only reversed.
Well, and it's also just, it's like if Kamala Harris wasn't super woke in 2019, like insanely woke in 2019, and now she's running super, like trying to be super moderate, or not super moderate, but like pretty moderate, right? If that wasn't the case, if Kamala Harris was a candidate who from the beginning was just anti-woke, saying woke people suck, blah, 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 none of this would be happening. They'd all be fucking whooping and cheering it on and say, oh yeah, fuck the woke people, whatever, because they don't care. Because for all their whining and complaining that Anna doesn't have principles, these are the people that don't have principles. Their only principle, their only position is just Donald Trump can't win, Donald Trump can't win, Donald Trump can't win. I will paint you any picture of reality. I will pretend however hard I need to pretend just to make sure Donald Trump can't win.
Yeah, I love it.
When
any picture of reality, that's what they're down to do.
Yes. And it's the opposite. Their thinking is what's led to this problem in the first place. Because if it wasn't for a bunch of spineless, pissant cowards like these people that are right here, if the left wasn't so fucking cowardly and called out all this woke shit and squashed it and strangled it in the crib in 2016, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, would we?
No, of course we wouldn't, because people would realize this is not an effective path to gain power. They'd be like, oh, that didn't work. Look.
Right.
They wrongly accused someone of racism and it didn't go anywhere. But I guess I better try something else.
Right. And Donald Trump's, being in the election and having the numbers, having all this stuff, Donald Trump he probably still would have won in the first election, but he would have still lost in 2020, and he wouldn't stand if wokeness was squashed, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, 8 years ago, Donald Trump wouldn't fucking stand a chance nowadays.
No. They don't get that, though. Look, it is a difference of strategy here, but we're dealing with little titty babies
here. Well, the problem is
so.
there's no trick, because they'll say like, well, Donald Trump is just this unique threat, so we can deal with this woke stuff, which isn't a big deal to them, which is just because they don't understand what's going on. They say, oh, this we just deal with this later. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm sure. I don't have no trust that any of these people would deal with any of this shit later. That if Donald Trump lost, that they'll say, okay, now it's time to just come out and destroy the socialists that are trying to infiltrate our society. No, they wouldn't do any of that shit. They'd still just be partisan hacks, and they'd still be so concerned about the next election. That's the problem.
Yeah. There's never any time for that.
Legislature should be able to decide whatever they want on presidential elections. But because, hey, both of these groups have some bad apples in them, I'm going to call myself an independent now. Like, what? Anyway, okay, keep going.
Then there was this insane reaction to.
Yeah, so Anna basically said this was the beginning of her journey, and they're making it sound like this was the entirety of her journey,
right,
which is completely bad faith. And also, look, they can't come to terms with the fact that conservatives might have some good ideas. Like, that's where it all begins, right there.
Mm-hmm.
Until you're willing to open your mind and think, oh my God, this person that I've been demonizing for most of my life might actually have a point, you're never going to get anywhere politically. You're just not. You got to at least consider the ideas on the other side.
One of my tweets in March 2023. Now, this one I was familiar with. I'm a woman. Please don't ever refer to me as a person with a uterus, a birthing person, or person who menstruates. How do people not realize how degrading this is? You can support the transgender community.
By the way, we've had a whole controversy where I've had tons of conservatives admit to me that men can actually get pregnant because there are XY people who can give birth through their uteruses and have legit vaginas. And so we just have this entire discourse where we've acknowledged that men can get pregnant by their own definitions used by conservatives and whatever about XY chromosomes being the thing that causes your sex to be one way or the other, to act like you're so offended if someone calls you a birthing person. Get over yourself. Jesus Christ.
Can you believe this?
It's so great.
Do you actually think that Pisco has had a bunch of debates with conservatives where they've all admitted, oh yes, Pisco, men can get pregnant? Like, what?
I assume he's talking some kind of conversation about I would guess about like the Olympic athlete person, because there's a question about whether they had intersex conditions and stuff. That's the only thing I could think of what he could possibly be talking about.
I don't buy this at all. He's basically saying, oh yeah, conservatives totally agree with me. Men can get pregnant. Look, we're past this.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not sure we're past it.
They're also like, and again, because, not surprising, the reason that Anna was bothered by that whole conversation in the first place was because it encoded within it is this idea that, like, okay, you as a woman, you only have value by having children, right?
Of course.
If you call someone a birthing person, like that is the
your purpose in life.
Right. That is your purpose in life. And it's funny because it used to be the left that was very critical of that notion. And she's like, I don't like this word. I don't like this term being used to denote a woman. There's more to being a woman than just having children.
Right.
So.
And, there was a time when people would listen to women's perspective, right? But
Well, I
that
thought you were
time
supposed
has
to listen and
passed.
believe women, but I guess it doesn't. I guess if it's on the wrong side of politics, it doesn't matter.
That
And
time has
again,
passed.
it's just the hypocrisy to all this, which is like, if peace can always other people are gonna scream, who cares? Who cares? Who cares? This is not a big deal. If it's not a big deal, no one cares. Why did, I don't know if they got unhinged, but why did so many of the large left-wing pundits on, the internet space that they reside in lose their fucking mind over this tweet? Why didn't they just say, well, I agree with Ann. I don't want to be called a birthing person, but it's not a big deal. Whatever. They didn't. They went insane over this fucking tweet.
Right. It's so weird because the same logic applies to the N-word. Like, why are you, if you guys think it's no big deal, why not bring back the N-word?
There you go. I like it.
It's denigrating to the group.
Right.
Look, people don't like the N-word because black people feel it's denigrating, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
Women feel this term is denigrating, but it's like, no, shut up. We're going to label you that. I don't care what you think.
Right.
It's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. Then the argument immediately shifts. Well, the N-word is more incendiary, right? Well, I agree, but the logic is the same.
Right.
All hell broke loose after I posted those words. Most friends in left-wing media didn't bother reaching out privately to discuss their disagreement with my personal preference. Instead, mainly self-described socialists took it upon themselves to profit from conflict by publicly attacking
all
me.
Personal. Like, is there any analysis of ideas here or a political philosophy? It's all, oh my God, poor me. I was attacked by these really rude people. And then that made me think that, maybe some leftists are bad. Wow.
She JK Rowling herself is what's happening right now.
Remind me.
So this is such low tier political commentary.
I know.
It's like, oh my God, she's so selfish. God, you
know.
guys are like the mean girls here.
They are.
What's going on?
Well, and it's this is the way that I feel about it. And I don't know, maybe I'm in the fucking minority here, but I do think it's really weird. And a lot of people do this, where if you're like friends with someone, or even if you're friendly with someone, but if you're like friends with some other commentator and they have some take that you disagree with, instead, and obviously Pisco doesn't agree with this because this was part of the contention I had with him, that instead of saying, oh, well, let's have a conversation about this, or let me talk to you about this, they go off on some unhinged rant on their platform, to their audience to try to smear you.
Yeah, to try to destroy your reputation.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the signature move of the mean girl, right?
Yep.
I think you'd probably be the one to have the lore knowledge here, but wasn't the whole birthing perfence thing reference to like legislation or medical policy?
Yes. Yes. It was like if you're crafting legal language for access to
So I guess you could use the N-word as long as it's in legal briefs, right?
I guess so.
That doesn't what the fuck? That doesn't make it any less offensive, dude.
Well, doesn't that kind of make it worse? You're enshrining in law some like weird term that you think is offensive to you as an individual. Like, how does that make it better?
You think? Yeah. Can you imagine the N-word all over your legal documents, all over your laws? Oh my God.
Reproductive care. Is it more accurate to say pregnant person or birthing person or woman? Now,
this is the same argument they would have made like back in the 1950s about using the N-word. Isn't it just more accurate? Like, what a fucking loser.
If you turn your brain off temporarily, it might make sense to say woman, because aren't women the people who get pregnant, right? But if we're including these sort of rare circumstances like Pisco's talking about, or intersex people, or obviously if we're including transgender men and we feel like affirming a trans man's status as a man is important, it might make sense to just use the sort of mechanical medical term. And even if you disagree with that, logic, can we just agree that it's just not that big of a deal? And
they totally don't understand it. It's like the group of women that are offended by the term is gigantic compared to the group of trans men that are offended by the term woman. Like, why do you bend over to the trans men?
Right.
Yeah.
Because they're lower on the oppression stack. That's the answer. Like
But
he
I-
said this was like the quote medical term or whatever. It's not birthing person. That's not a medical. This is it's a
Oh,
woke,
of course not.
politically
Yeah.
correct term. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah, the logic there makes absolutely no sense
No,
at all.
yeah.
It's not clear. It's definitely more confusing. Like it's not helpful in any way, shape,
No.
or form. I don't understand just from a utilitarian perspective, right?
Mhm.
You've got 10 people on one side of the track and you've got one person on the other side of the track, right? It's just it's a shitty move, right? But
Right.
you send the track down and kill the one person.
Well, no, I
okay?
mean, they could have just wrote in the legislation if they're trying to be like, all inclusive, right? They should have just wrote something like women and, trans men or like women and anyone,
that's
and
look at
birthing
there.
person, right? They could
There
have
you
just put like
go.
woman
Women
and, right?
trans men. You're exactly right.
Right. If
Yeah.
that was such a concern.
Yeah.
I mean,
Look, no one gets thrown under the bus.
right. And, talk about sort of like, then he says like, again, the whole, like, it's not a big deal. It's like, okay, if it's not a big deal, then why did everyone care when she said it? Why didn't they just hand wave it away? So obviously it was a big deal to a lot of people. And then number two, again, kind of going back to the wokeness thing, there was that story that just happened where it was like the Justice Department, okay, the federal Justice Department sued a
know.
state, okay,
know.
and one supposedly sued a state because they said that their test for police officers was bigoted, not because of anything that was on the test that they could point to and say was bigoted, but because of the results. Because they said, well, there's more women disproportionately failing out of the physical fitness test of the portion, which they fucking should. Number one, that makes sense. And number two, well, there was more black men disproportionately that failed out of the written portion. So therefore it must be racist. And this was the federal government was attacking the, and when you looked at the test, we looked over the test on stream and it was like ridiculous. It was like a joke.
Yep.
And,
I just want to ask her, like, how many people in your day-to-day life have you ever heard use these phrases? And the answer is going to be zero.
It's such a non-issue. But the thing is, it's all personal. She's like, don't call me woman. And she probably even acknowledged that it's appropriate for other people to have like the proper labels used, right? I don't think that she would not. Maybe she would not. Or maybe she's going to go full turf. Just don't call me a birthing person, because it's all about.
None of this is new. All this is controversy from like a year and a half ago, guys. Okay, can you pick it up a bit here? Like we all heard these stupid arguments a year and a half ago. They were just as dumb then. We need a good offensive name for peace. Going to be like, what? It's just you, you fucking idiot. We're just talking about you. Get over it.
You. And that's what this entire article is about. Just about you and your journey, everything that matters to you and all the bad experiences you've had.
It's so crazy. He just hates her guts.
I know.
You're so selfish. You should have taken one for the trans community.
All this because she's like, I'm going to take off this jersey that says Team Blue. Still don't like Donald Trump. Still think, he said a bunch of racist and bigoted shit. Still think he sucks. But I'm going to take off this jersey that says Team Left. Nah! Like just the screeching.
Yeah. I mean, I think she's completely correct. I think this strategy, this appealing to trans men over actual women is a losing strategy.
Yes.
Definitely a losing strategy politically. Which she said none of these guys have addressed. None of them have gone, oh, I wonder if there's more women voters than trans men voters. I thought you guys were doing political analysis here.
Smaller leftist YouTube show put out 5 separate videos skewering me about the tweet, and I believe that's a Vanguard, as a matter of fact, while conveniently erasing the advocacy I'd done on behalf of the trans community throughout my career. They even went as far as drawing a link between my tweet and trans, which sadly wasn't the most unhinged outcome of the debacle. TYT.
I don't think that was the Vanguard that did that, because she mentions in here. Here, we'll
He's volunteer YouTube chat moderator.
We talked to Vanguard and they seem nice, but like I was like looking over some of their catalog. They're like unhinged. They hate
are
Anna
totally
so
unhinged.
much. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know if they were just always that way and they're just nice. They were nice in our conversations, but I was like watching their videos about Anna. I was like, this is ridiculous.
I think if Anna went on their show, they would totally chill out. I think they would be like starstruck.
I don't know why they have such a hate boner for her. It's really weird.
It's It's like an Incredibles type situation, I think.
Oh, you think?
I do, yeah. I do.
You think they got go home, Billy?
They got like syndrome going.
Okay.
Like
maybe.
as soon as Anna went on, they'd be like, "Oh my god." Everything would change. Well, I don't know. They could go nuts too, because they're kind of blowing up a little bit.
Well,
so.
they were, because I remember, like, a while ago when this drama first started, like they were like friends with Olay, and they totally softballed Olay, even though she had that, like, she was lying about Anna and posted that, the N-word compilation so dishonestly about Anna.
Yeah.
And she was blaming Anna for their interaction she had in TYT, where Anna wasn't even saying things. She was arguing with Cenk about abolishing prison, which is a fucking retarded idea in the first place. So,
yeah, they are blowing up a little bit though. So they've tasted the power of the incendiary rhetoric, rhetoric, and they are. I mean, both those guys are in their 20s easily, so they're gonna be like, power. They're gonna jump on it.
Moderators put over the tweet, and someone reported me to human resources. Non-air.
See, that's not the Vanguard. That's that they had a trans YouTuber that worked for
but that was on their
TYT.
own channel, right?
Yeah. Well, they said it was the Vanguard. I don't think she's
no. She said there were some channel that put 5 response videos to them or something, to her or something.
Oh, okay.
That'd be a different thing, but
Jesus. Get a new job. I don't know what to say. Yes, you have some crazy leftists. Oftentimes we are fighting against them. We're like,
oh, you big liar, Pisco. You were not fighting against them.
Oh no, I can bet you. I can bet you. Okay, if you look at Pisco and this guy's fighting against the crazy leftists, that the only time they're fighting against the leftists is that when the leftists are saying that they're not going to vote for Kamala or something because she's not left wing enough.
Oh yeah.
I bet you that's like 99% of any of their going after the left.
That doesn't count.
Yeah.
What is so funny, Hutch?
Oh, it's just amazing. Just hearing like the behind this. That's just the least surprising Young Turk story you could have ever.
An on-air trans contributor even resigned from the company after being urged by online mobs and leftist shows to do so. Curious that not one of these shows hired her after she took their advice.
Oh, that's so painful.
That's pretty hilarious.
So painful.
That was pretty funny.
I don't know why. That's such a brutal mistake.
Yeah.
But whatever.
I never apologized for the tweet, and I never will. That whole experience forced me to come to terms with the intolerance on the left, and it allowed me to publicly reject the ideological shackles that kept my world small and less informed.
Dave Rubin on aisle 3. Dave Rubin on aisle 3.
And Dave Rubin used to work for TYT, right?
Yeah, weird. And Anna Kasparian used to like excoriate Dave Rubin. Oh, the intolerant to the left, progressive left. What are we going to hear next?
Today.
The fact that they can't tell the difference between Dave Rubin and Anna Kasparian, well, maybe they've not watched her other podcasts and stuff like that, but I just think the Anna Kasparian experience is so far removed from the Dave Rubin experience.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Today, I'm less certain and more curious than I was 4 years ago. I've made humiliating mistakes while covering political news because I was previously unwilling to consider or understand the perspective of Americans who vote differently from me.
That's on you.
What to expect from
the guy who's in the biggest ideological bubble is trying to say, that's on you.
I know.
Pisco, you don't understand them either. I don't know what you're talking about.
Unaligned. I'm hungry for dialogue, a space for in-depth analysis and a judgment-free zone. That's what I plan to do here. Every week, I'll provide subscribers. The point of this new project is the pursuit of intellectual freedom and open-mindedness. I want to nurture curiosity without fear of offending the sensibility of loyal partisans. I reject arguments about the evils of platforming people who are considered too naughty to converse with. I want to facilitate dialogue. I don't even know what my political identity or label is, and I'm not even sure I want to be pigeonholed. This is my effort in pursuing extreme honesty and humility in the quest for common ground and truth without the constraints of a tribal identity.
No, both though. She is going to make so much money doing this. I'm not even kidding.
Good for her.
I mean,
I don't know.
I'm skeptical, but
yeah, I'm skeptical too. So we'll see what happens. I think is a big risk. So.
It's funny because like all the people that they want to point to say that did like the sort of the pivot, right, to the centrist pivot, the Dave Rubin, Candace Owens, the Tim Pools, right?
Yeah.
They all chose a team very, very clearly, and choosing the team is what made them get that money, get that bag. So like this
Of
idea
course.
that like there's
Yeah.
all this money in being an enlightened centrist, this is just a total bullshit. It's a total lie.
Yeah, it's fiction. It's totally fiction.
I'm all in favor of you talking to other people who disagree with you, and you platforming certain individuals that you might really disagree with. I think within reason. I don't know. Like oftentimes people have problems with, like, I don't know, Nick Fuentes being platformed, that kind of stuff. Are you going to go that far? Are you going to platform Nick Fuentes? Are you going to platform like literal genocide people? So query to the extent to which this newfound tolerance is going to manifest itself in Anna's projects. But beyond that, great. You have this, talk to other people. Nothing was stopping you from doing that before. Left-wing people who support the Biden administration have these challenging conversations all the time.
I mean,
He doesn't understand. He really doesn't understand. Like, if she talked to these people on TYT and didn't completely be bad faith with them, like, showed any sort of empathy towards them or understanding of them, her audience freaks the fuck out. They totally freak the fuck out. Like, you're supposed to bring these people on to dunk on them, to show how they're idiots.
Right.
That's the perspective. And that's the perspective you have, Peace Code. That is definitely the perspective you have.
Mm-hmm.
You can't cozy up to these people. You got to show how they're morally inferior to you. You can't actually try to foster any type of understanding with the other side. Yeah.
No. Or, I know because Anna is very interested in helping the working class, and she feels that the Democrats, and a lot of people feel this way, the Democrats have essentially sort of thrown the working class aside, and that it would be nice if they could kind of get back to helping the working class and not being so focused on identity politics stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's my big contention with them. But look, everyone thinks I'm a right winger too. So remember when the Democratic Party was the party of the working class and the Republicans were the party of big business? Remember that?
Yeah, it is very interesting how it's kind of flipped.
Right.
So, well, I mean, I don't like a lot of working class people support the Republicans. I don't think the Republicans are necessarily going to push economic policies that are going to aid them at all, but the Democrats aren't really pushing economic policies to aid them either. So
a lot of people do believe that Trump is for the working class and against the big business community. And I mean, there's an argument to be made for that in the fact that, like, there's a lot of never Trumpers in the Republican Party. Maybe they're taking money from big business, so they're totally invested.
I think that the majority of the never Trumpers are people who are actually conservative. Because Trump isn't really conservative. They're either people that are actually conservative or people that are neoconservatives, because Trump is neither of these things. And they're like, I just don't want to support someone who's very clearly not on this, politically aligned with
not
me.
on the team.
Yeah, that's not in my, political alignment. Or they're people that just think that Trump is kind of an incompetent buffoon. And so they're like, well, why am I going to support an incompetent, buffoon? Or, I mean, hey, the list continues. Or people that just say, like, they don't like Trump's lack of respect for rule of law. So there's lots. I mean, I think there's lots of reasons for people to be never Trumpers without going to, like, they're being paid off.
Trump did a talk with, I'm not sure who the journalist was, but they talked a lot about tariffs and the economy. And I think it's probably the most substantive talk that I've seen throughout this election cycle.
Yes. Yeah, you sent it to me. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you listened to it, but it is kind of fascinating. I'm thinking more and more about the tariff situation. But, like, it's hard for me to listen to that and think, okay, Trump is a buffoon. Like, he goes through this negotiation process he did to get Air Force One upgraded, where he basically saved a couple $1 billion, maybe. I can't remember the numbers.
I don't think it's $1 billion for Air Force One, but it's probably millions of dollars.
Okay. Well, it's in the thing, and he saves. So he basically saves a bunch of money, and he's just like, does anybody else negotiate on these contracts? Well, look, even with my perspective of the economy, government spending does obviously increase the money supply. Like when people
Mhm.
say printer goes burr, they mean government overspending. So if Trump can renegotiate spending for military type stuff that doesn't affect the payroll of the military, it just is like equipment payroll, and it comes out of the different companies' profits, then it would shrink the money supply and fight inflation without actually raising taxes or doing anything like that. So
Well, part of what makes Trump, a decent politician or an effective politician, I should say, is that what he'll do is that he'll live through something. He'll have some personal experience, and then he'll like since he's knowledgeable about the personal experience, he'll relate it to everything that he possibly can as an example. And
yeah,
so, like that Air Force One example, it's funny because I forget why. I was looking through like a bunch of older Trump speeches. I realized he brings up that like constantly.
he does.
Yeah,
That's
he
the
brings
first
up
time
that.
I've heard it.
Yeah, I know it's the thing because they're all in these like kind of like not these big national speeches, but like all these, various rallies or like little things that he's speaking at. He brings up this Air Force One example. I think I saw it even more recently because there was something I'm trying to remember there was some clip that they were sharing of Trump, and I was curious what the context was. It was something about him talking about being like scared shitless as like the plane is landing and there's no lights or something. People were sharing
Yes.
around, and I was like, and he brings it up there too. And I'm like, wow, and I notice he brings this up a lot. And so this is what Trump does. He'll have some experience with some business deal or something in politics, and then he kind of relates it to a bunch of different things. And which is like that is very good politics because it makes you think, as you were saying, you give the impression like, oh, he has some understanding of the issue. This is
Yeah.
what I've criticized Kamala Harris is completely incapable of doing this action. She doesn't relate anything to her personal experience. Like she doesn't say like, oh, when I was going after the transnational gangs, she just says I went after transnational gangs. She doesn't say when I was going after transnational gangs, we had to do X, Y, Z, and this is how we got them. And then I'm going to use this technique or something to do whatever when I'm president, right? She never relates it specifically. So that's Trump's, definitely succeeds on that. Kamala definitely fails. But where I disagree, I didn't watch that whole speech. I think because like 2 hours, I think I watched like 40 minutes of it. Was that he wasn't, if you listen, he wasn't really answering the question. And the question was, if you throw all these tariffs, the guy was saying, the interviewer was saying, if you throw all these tariffs on, I think it was on car companies or something, he said that there were 14 million jobs that would be lost in America that had something to do with the export process or the import process, I should say. And then it would also cause inflation because you're going to raise the price of everything. And then Trump said, well, he did address it at first saying, well, if you just want more money, you put a small tariff on something, you put 10%. But if you want the factory to move back home, then you need to put a large tariff on it, like 50%. So his idea was if I throw this large 50% tariff on the car manufacturers, then they'll move the car manufacturing plants to America. And the guy said, okay, I mean, that kind of makes sense, but that's going to take like years. Like they can't just like snap their fingers and pop up a, car plant. It's going to take, couple 2 years 3 years to build a car manufacturing plant in America, and in the meantime the price of cars is going to skyrocket if you have this massive 50% tariff on everything. What are you going to do about that? And then Trump doesn't answer the question. Like he just pivots away to saying, oh, the economy is going to be so great, and then I think he asked another question about like beyond the car tariffs, just like other goods, because there's lots of other goods and services and things that are not services, but the other goods that we import that you couldn't necessarily have be produced in America. And if you just throw blanket tariffs on everything from every foreign country, I mean, that is going to cause massive price inflation. And it's interesting because on one hand, yeah, I can understand helping the worker, and that's fine. And if we were in a time period where there wasn't a lot of inflation already, you could say, okay, well, maybe it's a good idea that we should be doing this to help the workers. But we're in a time period where right now the biggest economic problem that literally everyone's pointing to is inflation. And Trump's number one policy for the economy isn't a massively inflationary economic policy. I mean, it's just fucking weird to me. It's bizarre. I mean, I guess people just don't realize it, so he skates by, but
Moving a factory overseas would obviously be different, but I just looked up and it says moving a factory from one state to another can take several months to a year. So the idea that it needs to take several years And I know Elon Musk moved his entire SpaceX operation out of California relatively quickly.
Okay, so let's say, well, first of all, as again, there's massive difference between moving it from state to state to international.
No, I
Okay.
totally agree, and I concede that, but obviously.
But let's just say theoretically, okay, let's say it takes only a year
Mhm.
to move some industry, some car plants to the states.
Mhm.
You understand that would still be a massively inflationary
Yeah,
process.
but he would just drop the tariff immediately. He would say, "Listen,
no. Even
look,
if
hold on.
Okay.
The purpose of the tariff is to get them to move the factory to America. Like as soon as they say, okay, we'll move the factory to America, they'll say, okay, I'll let you sell cars in America from your factory without the tariff until you're over here." And he just drops the tariff, and then the prices don't go up. He even talks about this.
You're not conceptualizing this correctly.
Look, he even talks about this later in the conversation, where he talks about how he tariffed Apple, and then Apple came to him. Did you get to that part of the conversation where okay, so he adjusts the tariff accordingly because of the products that they're working on.
Right.
But go ahead.
Okay. Why do they not have, like, why are they building factories in Mexico or other countries in
For cheap labor.
Okay, exactly.
Yes.
So if you say the only way to financially incentivize, to make it worth a company's while enough to move the factory back to America, is to slap this massive tariff on it. So then they move back to America and they open the factory here. Okay, number one, if you get rid of the tariff at that point, then then they're just going to close down the factory in America. They have to keep the factory open. Otherwise, like, that doesn't make any sense.
Are there already factories in America?
Obviously.
So what do they pay those workers, right?
No. Wait, hold on. Let me finish. Okay. So number one, you have to keep the tariff on or at least say, if you close down the factory or if you just ship back overseas, then you get the tariff again. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, the whole point is that if they open the factory in America and they have to pay American workers American wages, which I'm all for, that's going to increase the price of everything, and that price is going to be passed on the consumer. Thus, it's an inflationary.
But you already said there are
policy.
You already said there are factories in America making cars. So those factories are not overcharging, right? Like I don't know. Okay, the purpose of the tariff is because there's a wage discrepancy, right? Like they can make the car for half price in Mexico because the wages are a lot less there, right?
Yes,
so they basically add the tariff to bring the car price up to be competitive with American cars because Americans make more money, right? It costs them more money to actually produce the car here, right?
Right. Yeah.
So the whole purpose of the tariff is to make the car prices competitive with American products.
Right.
So, but what Trump is saying is, look, let's make them not competitive with American products, right? Let's make it a 50% tariff. And they say, look, if you give us this kind of tariff, we aren't even competitive with your products. And he says, okay, we'll move the factory over here and I'll take off the tariff. And then you're competitive with American prices.
Which raises the price of everything. I don't know why you're not acknowledging this.
How does it raise the price of everything? If there's already American workers over here working in an American factory, producing a car at a certain price.
Okay. Let me calm down for a second.
Okay.
You said, you acknowledge that the reason that the factory is in Mexico is because they can pay the labor significantly less.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Significantly. Okay. And thus, because they can pay the labor significantly less, that means that the product is significantly cheaper.
Correct.
And so an American can buy some car that was made in Mexico or some other place at a much lower price than a car that was made in America. Okay.
Right. So you've got car A in America, car B in Mexico.
You're right. And just let's say, like, theoretically, American car costs $5,000 to $10,000. Just say $10,000 more. Okay.
Right.
$10,000 more expensive. Okay. So then you have car B made in Mexico, $10,000 cheaper. So then if you slap the tariffs on and say, okay, that's going to raise the price of the car to $20,000, right? So now you suddenly lose the advantage of having the cheap labor. And they say, okay, well, we'll move the factory to America, right? So then that means suddenly that their car now, because they have to pay Americans to do American labor in America, the price of the car is not $10,000 less. It's now the same as the car made in America. You've just increased the price of cars everywhere that were not made in America that people had access to in the market. So you just that's an inflationary effect. I don't understand what
So
you're not
look,
understanding about that.
you have different cars obviously in the market, right? You've got
Right.
the car A, which was made in America, the car B that was made in Mexico, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that the people in America need access to that $10,000 car, that
Yes, of
$20,000
course they
car, that
do.
lowest tier car.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would have to look at it. I'm not sure. Like, if the car is of comparable quality to the American car, and the only difference is the cost of the labor. I mean, I would object to bringing in a bunch of illegal immigrants to build the cars and underpay them so that we could get cheaper cars. I don't see how it's any different than if we're letting the factory move over to Mexico and underpay all the workers over there and just importing the car. So, and look, I'm still kind
Well, one of
of,
them's illegal labor. I mean, I don't know if that's. I know, like you're talking about just comparable economically. Obviously, there's a completely moral, legal component to the illegal labor.
there is, I mean, but is it much different? I don't know the situation in Mexico. I don't know if they're paying them enough. Like, maybe the low wage is plenty of money to live off of, right? They can have a family and a house and a big problem in America is they're probably paying the American worker substantially more money, and the American worker still can't afford a house and a family and that kind of stuff.
Right, but see,
right?
and that's part of going back to the illegal labor thing, and we've talked about this. Is part of why, I believe the right hasn't really done anything or cared about doing anything about, deporting illegals or really stopping illegal immigration, is because they know that so much of the labor in this country is quote illegal labor, and it would drastically increase the price of a lot of things and hurt the economy if they did that. If all of a sudden produce cost, twice as much, if homes cost, 25% more. There's a lot of and I'm not saying that justifies any of these things, because I think that's what they should do. They should just make things priced what they should be priced. But I don't think our politicians really have the balls or the guts or the want to do any of that.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I would
again,
have to look at the details of the situation, but I do
my
like his argument logically makes sense that the tariff is going to incentivize people to
No,
move the factory
obviously
here.
it does.
Yes.
That's not what I'm saying. Okay.
Okay.
I'm fine. Again, I'm fine with people advocating for these policies as long as they're just honest about what exactly it is that they're supporting. If people say, yes, that will be inflationary, but I don't care because I want to help American workers, which is hilarious because it's a super left-wing position. And whenever the conversation of minimum wage comes up, the right loses its fucking mind about helping people with minimum wage because they say it's going to cause inflation. But suddenly, if we talk about, well, we need to build in America, and not import things from other countries, and it'll cause inflation. If people are suddenly on board with that, I'm just like, okay, I mean, I could be on board with that, but I just think it's really weird that there's seemingly this bizarre, inconsistent view here going on.
The big question for me is, it seems like Trump is motivated to move factories and jobs back to America. So I'm kind of,
yeah, he is.
Yeah. I don't know that Kamala Harris
No, I don't know if she cares about that.
has the ability to do that.
Well, I don't know if she's even expressed an interest in doing that.
But. Right. Yeah. So, and look, when Kamala Harris, I think the reason why Kamala Harris doesn't talk about how she prosecuted transnational drug offenders is because her office prosecuted them.
Right.
And she doesn't know a lot of the details. She's not instrumental in negotiating any kind of deals.
Right.
If she was, why wouldn't she just speak up and talk about that?
Yeah.
Do the same thing that Trump's recycling this negotiation for Air Force One thing that he did.
Right.
In this talk, and I haven't heard him use this before, he did say, this is what I'm doing all day long. This is my gig. I'm looking for where I can save money and create jobs. Right.
Right.
He even talks about the steel. He talks about how China is dumping really shitty steel on the market, and American steel is so much better. It's so much more pure. Do you think Kamala Harris knows the difference between crap steel and good steel?
Well, I don't think Donald Trump does. I mean, someone's told Donald Trump does. I don't know if he personally. I don't think he personally knows the difference. But
Well, I mean, he's a builder. Why wouldn't he? I mean, he's signed checks for supplies for building
I mean,
materials and
he's
stuff
okay.
like that.
Again, yeah, he's the delegator in these situations. Kind of like you're saying, Kamala Harris is the delegator at her office. I don't think Donald Trump is on the work site, doing
He
chemical
is.
analysis of the steel.
Well, no, I know he's definitely on the work site because I read one of the books of one of his project managers who was talking about how he's instrumental in ordering all the stuff for the buildings, and sometimes it comes and he's okayed some particular type of marble, and then all of a sudden it doesn't look kind of the way he imagined
it doesn't
it.
look the way. Okay, but that's very different. That's someone saying that there's an aesthetic quality that he wants in his buildings versus him understanding the chemical difference between Chinese steel and American steel. Besides someone who works for him telling him, "Oh, Chinese steel fucking sucks shit, and we should don't use that." Which I believe someone has told him that. Yes.
Well, I only brought up because he's dealing with contractors on all the materials that go into the building. I only brought up the marble as
personally doing it, but okay.
Okay. Well, I could cite my source, but
okay, it's fine. We have to move on because I told you we have a hard out at 4 o'clock and we're only like halfway through this video. So
okay, we'll continue.
I don't know. The frustrating part for me is that it's obviously she's drawing something of a moral equivalence between the left and the right, which I just don't think is very legitimate. Certainly not in our contemporary politics, where the left is basically Democrats and like misaligned leftists, and then the right is basically Republicans and maybe some libertarians as well, right? These are just very fundamentally, morally speaking, like they're just very different groups of people, right?
Hold on, let me go back a second.
Moral equivalence between the left and the right, which
would you want to talk to this guy? I think this guy would talk to us. This
guy. I don't really know that much about him.
I think we've talked to every single one of these people except Econo Boy, right?
Right. Well, you said you talked to him like years ago about something.
I did, yeah, totally.
Right.
We should bring him on to talk about MMT. It'll be great.
I just don't think
he could take the conservative position.
There you go.
It's certainly not in our contemporary politics, where the left is basically Democrats and like misaligned leftists, and then the right is basically Republicans and maybe some libertarians as well, right? These are just very fundamentally, morally speaking, like they're just very different groups of people, right? And I obviously have a very strong perspective one way or the other, but that doesn't stop people. That doesn't stop me or people like us basically from talking to people like Rob Knorr, Adam and Sitch, all these other different conservatives.
Counterpoints.
To, like Jesus.
Yeah. Oh, look, we're conservatives now. Okay.
What the fuck? Oh, this dude's a retard.
Yeah, like Jesus. I can't
Counterpoints drops the N-word. I mean, casually, and he's considered one of the good. He's considered one of the good.
Is that true? Counterpoints.
I don't know.
Uses the N-word on his.
I don't know.
Real?
I'm unfamiliar with this accusation.
Oh, that's crazy.
Is Counterpoints
that's insane?
Is Counterpoints one of the good ones just because he won't vote for Donald Trump? Is that like what dictates?
I guess. Look, they're willing to accept the N-word out of him just because he
doesn't vote for Trump. Trump is worse than the N-word. There you go.
I mean, that guy is the whitest guy you can think of.
Right. It's interesting.
Conservative,
average
right?
Conservative.
Yeah.
No, but like like obviously we've each of us combined is.
Look at that. I mean, look, I thought they're saying that they're kind of friendly with Connor. They're hitting him for saying the N-word, saying it's the average conservative. With friends like this, who needs enemies? Kind of situation.
Oh yeah, totally. Frenemies.
Hours and hours and hours and hours of conversations with people that we disagree with. Some of those people have probably changed our opinions, perhaps transformatively in the course of conversation. Certainly, I've had experiences like that, and I've been open talking about those things. But again, to equate the two sides, morally speaking, basically just because you had an experience where an admittedly small group of leftists really radically disagreed with you, join the club. Anybody who's on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I don't know what he means when he says morally equate. Is he just saying that he thinks that you can't morally equate because the left is just so obviously more moral and the right is obviously evil? Is that? I mean, that's what he means. Sounds like the implication to what he's saying is.
That's what he means.
As opposed to, because I mean, I don't even think Anna was making. She's just saying that, like, yeah, there's, bad guys on both sides, there's good guys on both sides. Right now you can't really, the sides can't understand each other because of the tribalism. So I'm going to kind of take off my tribal label so I can least try to understand where the other side's coming from and have conversations with them.
True.
Moderately on the right has the same experience, but we don't wait that two sides morally. We don't change our perspective on things. Yeah,
right. I have never changed my mind about like a policy preference because somebody treated me a certain way. I have changed my mind on certain things because I heard good arguments. I would never like abandon my like liberal principles because like a liberal treated me poorly one time. That just means you have a really flimsy underpinning.
I don't know if anybody else adopts this.
I fucking hate this bad faith argument right here. This argument. You've been tortured out of your principles. Like you have absolutely no principles because somebody was mean to you.
Right. Well, I
this
mean,
is such bullshit.
I don't even know if Hutch understands. I mean, he could just be so in the bubble. He doesn't even understand what he's talking. Like, what's going on here? Because the situation is that when you're in the milieu, okay, when you're in the malaise of being on your team, it is more difficult for you to even see what's going on. And so I think Anna was talking about this with, a lot of the, living in California, and a lot of the left-wing criminal reforms were making things worse or are not working. Criminal and homeless reforms are just making things worse and worse and worse. And as long as you're just like on this dedicated team left, you don't want to attack your side because you don't want to help the Republicans. You don't want to help the other side, or just because you literally can't perceive it because the right is attacking your side over these issues. So then you go into automatic defensive mode, and you can't actually just objectively look and say, okay, did this policy work? Yes or no?
Yeah. Crime is way up in Los Angeles, but you would have every single one of these mofos that crime is way down. What are you talking about? They're just in complete denial.
I didn't look in specifics of it yet because I didn't have time today, but there was something about, the FBI saying that they had to change the crime statistic numbers to increase the number
for
of
the
murders,
year
I believe.
2022.
For 2022?
Yeah. Supposedly there was a bunch of unrecorded crime in 2022 that they updated the numbers. So
right.
But it came out of Libs of TikTok. So I was like, look at this first, right?
Well, no, I mean, it really happened. I don't know how that impacts the conversation or not, because some people were saying that the 2022 numbers are heavily cited for the crime going down, but I thought there was more recent numbers that they're talking about. So I'm not sure.
Right.
A position, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. Like I certainly don't go into controversial waters the way that a lot of other commentators do, and I try to be circumspect about that. I certainly, as we'll say, passion.
Maybe we should read super chats if you got a heart out. So
okay, well, I just want
we can come back to this.
We can. I just want to listen. What he's saying is it's so ridiculous. What he's about to say.
Politics, to be sure, but I've been, even I've gotten my fair share of pushback in my YouTube comment section and in emails and on Twitter and stuff like that. And my position is that if somebody to the left of me criticizes me or lashes out at me, even in the most vicious ways, and it's happened a time or two, not only, like Hutch, like you say, not only would that not drive me away, but I am actually determined, just almost out of spite, to be even more of an ally. Like, you're not going to get rid of me. I will continue to be an ally to the progressive left, even if the progressive left hates my guts because they think when it comes to, domestic partisan electoral politics, I'm too willing to.
I'm sorry, listen, I'm sorry. But this just seems like the most cuck shit I've ever heard.
I know. Look, I was going to say, we discovered.
Oh my God.
We discovered how to make him a better ally, right? We literally just have to put him in a chair in the corner and
just berate him. It's so weird. It's such a weird answer. It's like, oh yeah, when the progressive left shits on me, that just makes me want to help them more. I'm like, all right, you have like a masochistic cuck fetish, I guess. You do you.
Oh,
very
so
strange.
Bad. That's so
very
bad. Very
strange. Yeah.
And cheerlead the Democratic Party, because that's usually what it is. It's like, Josiah, you're not on the left. How dare you? You're willing to back the Democrats, and it's like, you know what? I'm just going to continue to be an ally of you, whether you like it or not, even if it involves, voting for Democrats. And so to me, I would almost like run in the opposite direction. Instead of like running away from the left, it's like I would almost want to annoy them further by saying, nope, you're not going to drive me away. You're not going to scare me away. But this is just ridiculous.
It's so funny. It's like he's basically praising the undying loyalty to one side, to one faction, the brainwashed capacity to one political team, that even if you don't want me, even if you try to throw rocks at me and tell me to get out of here, I'm still going to run back to you like a loyal dog. And he's just saying it's like it's a good thing. And it's very weird that that he would think that this would come across as like a positive.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
strange.
And listen, maybe I'm doing a little bit of mind reading here, but I mean, I'm looking at the faces of the other guys in the call, and I don't know, man. I don't know if they're feeling the same vibe.
Part of a lot of people's principles are, honoring their dignity, right?
Right.
As soon as your dignity is called into question, but you're like, oh, well, I'm sticking to my principles. They're like, are you really? Do you really have principles at that point?
Yeah, it just seems kind of interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, well, let's read some super chats.
Well, I'm sure these guys seem to be thirsty to engage with us. So.
Right. Well, it's funny because I looked on Anna's Substack in one of her, I think it was her first Substack. I'm not subscribed yet, so I can't read the whole article, but I will. Okay. I will subscribe to Based Anna. Like her first article after the one that they're reading is more working class voters are flocking to Trump. And she's criticizing Trump for saying that Trump is like not really, he's like he says things advocate for the working class.
But he's not working class enough.
But he's not. Yeah. But he doesn't actually care about it. So.
Okay.
It says every once in a while, former President Donald Trump allows his mask to slip, and he certainly broke his quote man for the working class character during a recent campaign rally in Erie, Pennsylvania. He said, quote, I know a lot about overtime. Trump told rally goers who just seconds ago broke out thunderous applause over his pledge to end taxes on Social Security, tips, and overtime. The excitement died down to relative silence as Trump finished his sentence. I hated to give overtime. I hated it. I'd get other people. I shouldn't say this, but I get other people in I wouldn't pay.
Oh my God, why would you say that?
I don't know. Why would you say that, right?
Well, look, I guess he's really doing that cost-cutting thing. He's like, we're not going to pay overtime to any of these government employees.
Right.
They're like, woo!
Trump quickly realized that what he just uttered didn't play well within the crowd and immediately moved on, but that moment was an honest glimpse into who he really is. That's not my speculation either. It's not like he was some warrior for the working class during his time in the White House, having appointed Marvin Kaplan, a longtime lawyer for House Republicans, and William Emanuel, a corporate lawyer. Senator Elizabeth Warren called Kaplan out in particular, skewering him for working on measures that strip workers of their rights to organize their workplace and form unions. But despite all that, the Trump administration's affinity for repealing Obama-era labor protections, and she has a link to whatever she's talking about, the former president continues to increase his support among union members and working class Americans. And then, it continues. So,
yeah, man, this is why this election is just, it's so impossible.
Right.
Like you want to, I think Trump did very well in that interview, and it does persuade me a bit that he's the right guy for the job.
He did do well in the interview. Yeah.
But I hear this and I'm like, oh my God, what a fucking disaster.
Right.
Like it's constantly the good and the bad, the good and the bad, the good and the bad. I wish the Kamala Harris, what is, and look, I did a back and forth on Twitter with Connor counterpoints. And what are the arguments in favor of Kamala Harris? Because I come up empty every single time. So, but anyway, let's do some. Oh, go ahead.
I was just say her next two were Chicago mayor shut down valid questions about alleged school board coup. The city's facing nearly a $1 billion budget shortfall, but Mayor Johnson wants to take out high interest loan anyway. And then the next one after that was, let's talk about the real grifters. Progressively branded nonprofits have repeatedly misused public funds. Why won't the left call them out? And it's about, I think, the failed homeless measures in Los Angeles. So anyway, so
yeah, look, I'm just going to sign up for the Substack as well, and and
Right.
definitely read. So
Coda Stevenson for $5 says, Adam, what was the name of the book that you talked about with the complications of biological sex? My friend is getting her PhD in biology and wants to read it.
the complications in biological sex.
Was it Why Gender Matters?
Why Gender Matters is the book that we're really talking about that. Yeah.
I think that's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Why Gender Matters is a great book.
Bo Peck for $20. Thank you so much. Says, hey guys, was finishing listening to stream yesterday and not to start the internal debate again. We're not going to start it, but it occurred to me the internal threat detection could be why the left has a reputation for eating its own. True. You are completely true. That's probably why that makes sense. Why there's a very low loyalty foundation in the left in the first place.
Very true.
There'd have to be. Yeah. Dialogue always for $10. The real one says a quote, Dave Rubin is to suddenly go from radical left to gaslighting with centrists and right wingers never addressing the center left arguments you remove in the first place. I don't think that's accurate. I think the Dave Rubin is to suddenly go from the left to, I mean, you could say there was a transitional period where he was saying that he was independent or centrist, but then he continued the journey to just very clearly on the right. So clearly that when he was on Joe Rogan was like making fun of him. Like, what are you talking about? When he was criticizing like the postal system and other stuff that the government does.
Yeah, remember he was talking about the contractors, Joe Rogan was, the contractors working in his home and how like just trusting them to do whatever they wanted was like crazy.
Right, yeah, exactly.
He's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. Libertarian Sasquatch for $2 says all the Anna detractors just proved her right. True.
True, always, yeah.
Neil Johnstone for 15 months. Thank you. Says Sitch on Final Fantasy VII Classic last year led to my series revisit. Finished 13. Sitch and Adam show themes. Antitheism. Your God is false. And there's no free will. Wow. I never played 13. So I've only played 7, 8, 10, and 10 too. And
so there's themes of the show in there. That's interesting.
There you go. Well, Final Fantasy X is all about religion being bad. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. MA566 for $2 says Sitch and Adam are my favorite grifters. Well, thank you.
We'll keep grifting.
The Wooster for $5 says Anna's becoming red pilled. Meanwhile, Connor counterpoints when full spurg out TDS Destiny Orbiter with Adam living rent free in his head.
Look, I did a back and forth with him on Twitter that we'll go through next week. We can't stream tomorrow, so.
Right, yeah. Jonathan Smith for $10 says Sitch, quote, I don't know if they're lying. End quote. By definition, they aren't. To lie, one must know they're speaking false. They lack the intelligence and wisdom to be capable of lying. There you have it, everybody.
They sure know what it is to call somebody a liar, though, which that's just, it's so incendiary. Like, why can't we just have a modicum of good faith for people?
Yep. Crack Rock Steady, our favorite Ninja Turtle supervillain for $50. Thank you so much. Says, I'm a bit late on the update, but I ended up going to a relative's house in Spring Hill for the hurricane. I definitely couldn't stay in Clearwater. Wow, I didn't know you lived in Clearwater. Wow.
The important part, my house survived.
Yeah, my house survived, hoping it's the last one for the year, wishing the best for Anna through this hate. Yeah, wow. Yeah, Clearwater was in a bad area too. So I think there's like crazy building codes where, depending on how close to the coast you are on Clearwater, I believe, like you can't even, like the new homes, they have to be built an entire story off the ground.
Really?
Because of flooding. Wow. Yeah, like the bottom ground can only be like a pool or a garage or something, right? It can't be like an actual room. So
got to build your house on stilts.
Essentially.
Crazy.
So. Joe the Make for 30 months, and I'm glad to hear that your house survived.
Yes, of course.
Yes. Joe the Make, thanks so much for 30 months. Says Pisco conveniently denying someone's lived reality doesn't sound very progressive.
Does not at all.
No.
Attacking women? What a misogynist.
I know. Sketch for $5 says, no, Pisco, we shouldn't ignore the baddies in our respective parties. We put them on blast for making the rest of us look bad. Very based and true.
Yeah. How would he like it if the right just overlooked all those neo-Nazis, right?
There you go. Brian for $5 says they may not be, quote, woke, but they are partisan hacks that can't accept that their side can do no wrong and the other side can do no right. True. That is very accurate. Yes. Ostracy for $5 says Adam and Sitch being left-wing but not chastising me is exactly why I'm here. That and audience capturing Adam. There you go. I like
why are you doing that, Ostracy? Look, they're going to clip that shit.
There it is.
It's crazy to me. Like, people have been listening to the show long enough. I can't imagine that they give a fuck really who I vote for. I mean, I voted for Kanye last time. Nobody gave me shit.
Right. Vote for
Yeah.
Black Hitler. How dare you?
Look,
I mean, I voted for
vote
Biden, and some people, not a lot of people, some people were super triggered about that. But
yeah, look, I don't look. It's weird because you did vote for Biden, and our show leans right. 60% to 40%. Like, why
Right.
why are there more right wingers here? Probably to give you a hard time for voting for Biden, but
A's for $5 says, screw Pisco, screw Hutch. With every one of these losers, his behavior is why people vote out of spite for Trump, i.e. young men.
yep. They're gonna
Ma-
definitely clean up on the spike vote.
They are, yeah. Mahjin for $5 says, Adam, I care deeply about who you vote for. Because if they pull Kanye, it'll be a hilarious pattern. Hi, Sitch, I'm not right wing, just extreme. There you go.
Look, maybe I will vote for Kanye.
No, don't do it, Adam. Brian for $20 says they claim that Anna, thank you, says they claim that Anna is right wing when all she said is she's not on the left. She can be a centrist who no longer wants to be partisan and take arguments only on the merits. And if she were on the right, that would be okay. Yeah, that's what's so crazy about this is like they haven't really pointed to any specific belief she's held that they're like, oh, or I mean, specific like political philosophy that they think that she's flip-flopped on. They say, oh, look, she used to believe this and now she believes this. Look at her. Now she supports Trump. Now she's supporting, destroying labor unions or something. Like they don't point to anything specific. They just say, oh, how dare she take off her team jersey? How dare she?
Yeah, it's sad, but they're all partisans, so it's a big, scary thing for them.
Yep.
I think they do know that we are the kingmakers, Sitch. I
True.
do think it scares them just that I'm contemplating voting for Trump more than anything. Yeah.
Red 473 for 5 months says, how does Pisco have time to practice law while streaming as much as he does? I have a white collar job and just enough time to send this chat. Yeah, I have no clue. That's a good point. I have absolutely no clue. Majin for $5 says, if they obfuscate embarrassing leftism to liberals, I wouldn't call this spoonful of progressive mainstream left, not far left, but most likely progressive. Yeah, maybe. Ace for $5 says, I once saw Hutch and Pisco as reasonable, and I probably agree more with them than Anna. I have my problems with Anna, but this response is so unhinged.
True.
Very true.
Yep.
Sodoge for 22 months. Thanks so much. Says, I'm surprised Adam streaming about Ace Monglu.
Asamoglu. Yeah.
Oh, it's supposed to be like asthma.
Getting a Nobel in economics this month. Really? Asamoglu wrote Why Nations Fail.
Oh.
A Nobel laureate.
Wow. Getting Nobel in economics this month. Not sure I agree with the thesis entirely, but still good for him.
That's crazy. Yeah. Awesome.
Good for him. Look at that.
Yeah.
I like it.
That's the book that on my first debate with Vosh, I mentioned that book, Why Nations Fail. Now he's a Nobel laureate. And everybody in Vosh's community was like, oh, you read a book? Fuck you.
That's funny.
It is hilarious.
Moondog for $5 says, 4 grown men trying to dog walk a person for literally writing out their feelings and telling their cognitive journey. Also, hi, guys. True.
Yes. The irony.
Sketch for $2 says, lefties don't understand the Ferguson-Floyd effect. That is accurate, yes.
Did you see that clip I posted from CNN? There's a CNN panel, and some guy on the CNN panel brings up the Ferguson effect.
Ooh.
And they all deny that it's even a thing. They call him a fucking liar, like right to his face. It's hilarious. Yeah. It's on my timeline if you want to check it out. So it is pretty funny. I'm like, what? This is insane.
Well, that's the problem. They're just so information siloed. They probably honestly just don't even know about it.
Yeah.
So,
but the fact that they were just calling him a liar on national television is like weird.
Right. Pisco's never the same after Ricada made him almost cry on stream. Wait, what? When did that happen?
I thought he was going to cry on our stream, to be honest with you.
Okay. What was that? What was the conversation about there? That's funny. Okay, where was I? My thing just crashed.
Austin Peters for $2 says Vosh is 30. Oh, wow.
Oh, my God.
Wow. I remember when I turned 30, it was like a big nightmare. The whole time I was 29, I told everyone, oh, I'm 30, just to kind of cushion the blow.
Lucifer Zilman for 5 Canadian says, this is why I love this community. Also, did you know I got a new puppy? She's freaking adorable and is already potty trained. Well, look at
What?
that.
That's
good.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I know you're high on your new puppy.
Right.
God, I wish I had a puppy. That'd be awesome.
Dialogue always for $5 says, hilarious to watch you demand the left call it the radicals when you literally see their radicals going to Jill Stein because we called them out. Yeah, but then if that's not really true though, because if that were true, Dialogue always, then the mainstream left wouldn't bend over backwards to be afraid of insulting the far left. So that's obviously not accurate.
Well, no, and that's what they're worried about. They're worried about more people defecting to Jill Stein.
Right.
So, I mean, you're kind of making the argument for not calling out the far left.
And I bet the people that are defecting Jill Stein are probably mostly over Israel too. So
yeah.
Lethal Train for $5 says, when the American flag is labeled as racist, you've lost the higher ground on sanity. I love the debate. Pisco, he's such a paper bag leftist. Well, I mean, reach out to him. Seems like he's pretty down for that stuff. Mike Mills for $5 says, do you guys care more about wokeness or Trumpism? Rampant conspiracy theory, isolationism, anti-establishment, disinformation, divisiveness, etc. So my feeling on it is that I think they're both pretty fucking awful, but I'm a little less concerned about Trumpism just because I feel like Trumpism is based around a person. And so if Trump wins or loses in 4 years, he will be gone. And I don't think this thing that you're calling Trumpism or people call bagism or whatever you want to call it, I don't think it's going to exist beyond Trump. I think it's going to die or go away when Trump goes away, which is going to happen regardless of the outcome of this election in the next 4 years. Where wokeness, I think the problem I have with wokeness is it's not based around a person, specific person. It's just based around a set of principles and ideas. And it's like infiltrated into so many institutions on the left and in the mainstream that it's kind of unclear to me how exactly it will be extricated unless the left does a very major pivot heel turn against wokeness.
Yeah, the difference I see just in the conspiracy theories and stuff like that, I don't know about the isolationism or the anti-establishment stuff, but definitely in the conspiracy theories, it's the left's conspiracy theories are kind of mainstream. Like obviously CRT and stuff like that, they're just they're in the culture already. So, and I look at those as if they are. I mean, they basically are conspiracy theories. So
they are, yeah.
And that's a form of disinformation and obviously massive divisiveness. So there is a strain. I guess. Look, I'm not sure I agree on your definition of Trumpism. So, but if you're defining Trumpism that way, then obviously I'm totally against it. Like disinformation, divisiveness, we're against all that stuff.
Joe the Make for $5 says, installing a dehumanizing offensive term into law isn't that big a deal. A hyper effeminate male mean girl progressive. There you go. TL1524 for $2 says, the Adam and Sitch survivor group has officially assembled.
Oh yeah,
that's funny.
Nice.
Libertarian Sasquatch for $2 says, it's fine if you're offended, but not okay if they are. Yes. Lethal Strain for $5 says, does this panel not realize that they are exactly the people Anna talks about in this entire article? They're the hateful and dismissive leftists.
They don't, which is part of the delicious irony of it.
Yeah. Ace for $5 says, these guys don't care about beating Trump. If they did, they wouldn't act like this. Actual children. Yet, well, I think they do. It's just they're so emotionally unhinged about it. They don't understand how to go about it in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, know, it's like logically. A 2-year-old. They want the ice cream,
and they
but
just
they don't know how.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. They're not sure how to go about getting it.
And you're like, listen, if you would behave, I'd give you the ice cream. And they just keep screaming, and you're like, okay.
Okay, keep going.
Ace for $5 says, the reason these guys don't care about Anna's sexual assault story because they would let Harris do the same to them, bend them over backwards.
Oh my Ace. Ace.
Wow. Nailed it. More than one way. Electro for $10. Thank you. Says, I'm disappointed in both you guys. How can you guys go through the stream and not have Anna's Trump bad clip? Like you can use it at any point here and it would be comedy gold. You're right. We totally dropped the ball on that one.
Trump bad. Trump bad. That was Edward a funny clip. Yeah.
If you don't know, there's a very good clip that Actual Just Warrior uses sometimes of Anna saying, Trump bad. Edward Sr. for $10 says, if Trump would just say tariffs, quote, tariffs will be used to reduce income tax. Not sure how, but I'll figure it out. You'll love it. I mean, That's a good strategy. That is a good. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, but it is a good strategy. I like it. I like it.
The tariffs do reduce the money supply. I mean, it is effectively a tax. Yeah.
Right.
But it's a
right.
tax that
I'm going to
we
reduce
don't
your
pay.
income tax because you're going to be making less money. That's not a good way.
Right. Well, it's to make Americans make more money, obviously. So.
Alex Wright for $2 says you guys should react to the interview on Sunday. Which interview?
The Alex wanted us to react to the Trump interview.
Oh,
yeah.
Probably
Which
not
I am
Sunday,
super
but
curious about your perspective on
maybe,
it.
maybe we'll watch it next week.
I think, Alex, you're very interested, but I think when we talk about economics, a lot of people just kind of, their eyes glaze over.
Right. MA566 for $5 says blanket tariffs are silly and lazy. He needs to have targeted tariffs and use the tariff revenue to build factories here. Well, it's interesting because it seems like in the interview, he's trying to sort of advocate for both of those things, which is confusing, but whatever.
Well, I did. Yeah, his specificity on the tariffs made me think that he would do more of a targeted tariff thing.
Right. Ace for $5 says these guys are friends with Destiny and they wonder why the left is so toxic. Being independent, evil, cheering assassination, a difference of opinions. Ooh, that's a good point. Cameraman 502 for $20. Thank you so much. Says Adam, you're missing the comparative advantage in manufacturing. The Mexico factory can build a car cheaper, but can't build everything. It would be better for U.S. workers to use their high skills that others don't have. I mean, I've heard that argument too, but
I think we have plenty of people in America without high skills, though, right?
okay,
Obviously.
maybe.
We have fast food workers. You can't say that they're high skilled, right?
Agla here for 23 months says she's deliberately taking a long time, not drawing an equivocation between the left and the right, and these chuckle fucks are mocking her for it. Very true. Fate and Morality for $2 says Sitch, Kamala, sucks, cope, and see. Thank you. Did I say Kamala? I don't know. Jonathan Smith for $5 says Sitch, Adam's right on this one because they're not moving to Mexico so they can sell the car cheaper, same price. They're doing it to earn more. Well, okay, if Jonathan Smith, if you're going to take the price gouging perspective, which Adam completely disagrees with, so you actually don't agree with Adam, but okay.
Well, look, they're going to sell it for what the market will bear, and if they can sell it for $50 cheaper than the car made in America, they probably will.
Okay, right? We'll see. Solos for $5 says tariffs have been laughed out of the room by all modern economists. It's counterproductive, both short and long. Anyone supporting it isn't serious. There you go. Alex Wright for $2 says Colin Kasparian, Dave Rubin is hyper dishonest. True. Chachi McSwack for $20. Thank you. Says this quote, I just personally wouldn't change my opinions if people on my own side were mean to me. Garbage is just that stupid. Quote, I feel bullied really. Boars comic that gets spammed on Twitter. They cannot make an original argument. Accurate. Sodos for $5 says tariffs won't work long term because they ultimately depress demand. People don't magically decide to pay more because of tariffs. They just buy less. Well, that's a good point too. And Solos for another $5 says Trump's steel tariff led to fewer people buying American steel, not more. Steel jobs shriveled up just as fast, if not faster. Tariffs don't work. Well, you should look into that, Adam, to see what happened with that.
Yeah, I'm curious. Obviously,
curious,
yeah.
Alex Wright for $10 says it's not fair to say the Democrats have abandoned labor. The Butch-Lewis Act and the American Rescue Plan saved the pensions of millions of union workers. Julia Su has been pro-labor over at the Labor Department. That is true. That is very true. Yeah, it wouldn't be fair to say that. I shouldn't have said that. It's just the perception of it because so much gets shunted into the culture war viewpoint, even by the voters. It's so funny because all these people, you know, like in that panel we were just watching, they all complain about the culture war stuff. And yet that's how the majority of Americans perceive all politics is through the culture war perspective.
Which totally sucks. Hey, Solido, send me links on Twitter if you have links to the steel stuff.
Right. Muggy for 18 months says anime pitch, main character is an incel, sister is a femcel, and get this, incest. Boom, profit.
Oh my God.
I do not support casual incest in anime or even formal incest in anime. I do not support incest in anime to any capacity. So
good job. Nice save. All right.
Death by Sloth for $2 says those who leave the left often get accused of betraying their principles just because people are mean to them. But if enough people with specific ideas in their heads behave poorly, it's reasonable to assume they're linked. Very true. Anyway, thank you guys so much. I got to go. We'll see you all on Sunday.
Take care, everyone. Bye.